Hi everyone, welcome to today's lesson. Today we're going to talk about free trade, and it's going to be pretty much the exact opposite of what we talked about last time when we talked about trade barriers. Today we're going to look at why countries would have 100% free trade, what are some of the free trade organizations, and what are some of the pros and cons of having 100% free trade. So make sure you're in your interactive notebook and you're following along. Okay, we're on page 5 of your interactive notebook, and again today we're talking about free trade. But let's start off with our essential question. Why do some countries erect trade barriers and some advocate free trade? So like I said, this is going to be a little bit of an opposite of what we talked about in the previous lesson where we looked at trade barriers. As a reminder, trade barriers are a way of cutting off trade. It might be a potential for, a limited quantity. It might be 100% trade cut off with a trade embargo. So today we want to talk about the other side of that coin, why some countries want 100% free trade, because there is free trade around the world. So a lot of countries, or many people out there, favor lowering trade barriers to increase trade around the world, or increase this idea of free trade around the world. Free trade is going to be exactly what it sounds like: the trading of goods and services between different countries with zero or no government restrictions or laws on either side. So there's no tariffs, no quotas, no embargoes, obviously. So just 100% we trade back and forth. There are various free trade organizations out there, one of the biggest ones being the World Trade Organization. This is an international organization that's based out of Geneva, and it monitors and enforces all rules governing global trade. So this is kind of the biggie of all free trade organizations. Then we also have the United Nations. This is an international organization that was actually formed after World War II. And it was meant to promote peace, security, and cooperation with the member nations around the world. Then we have something called the World Bank. It's an international bank that offers low interest rates and advice and information to developing nations. It works closely, since it's an agency of the United Nations, so they work closely together. So again, when we talked about our developing nations, the World Bank would really work with them to help them get closer and closer to becoming a developed nation. And then finally, we have the European Union. This is one that's been in the news a lot lately because there's been some back and forth with countries that want to come in and out of it. But it's an economic and political union of 27 member countries together throughout Europe. And they cover pretty much the entire continent of Europe. Within this organization, they have the same monetary unit. They have free trade. Countries in Europe used to have all their own different currencies, like the French had... They used to have their own different currencies. Like the Germans had the marks, the English had the pound, the Spanish had, I think it's called the lira, so on and so forth. And then once all these countries joined together, they had a common monetary system or currency system known as the euro. So this is just one example of a free trade organization that's used in Europe. Then we also have one that's a little bit closer to home. We have what was called NAFTA, and now it's morphing into something called the USMCA. This is a North American, so United States, Mexico, and Canada agreement that promotes free trade between our three countries. And like I said, it used to be known as NAFTA, or the North American Free Trade Association or Agreement. I forget if it's agreement or association. Anyway, now it's the USMCA, the United States, Mexico, Canada agreement. So let's talk a little bit more in depth about this agreement. You are going to spend some time learning about this in your activities today, but let's talk about kind of what it was and how it became what it is now. So the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA, became effective in January of 1994 when President Bill Clinton was in office. It gradually eliminated most tariffs and other barriers on products and services passing, again, like we said, between the countries in North America, the United States, Canada, and Mexico. So it becomes a free trade agreement between those three countries. It was created to increase jobs and trade on both sides of both borders. Now, in recent times, we have, with the administration of Donald Trump, we have the USMCA that was recreated with the new leaders of both Canada and Mexico. It was a deal that was intended to replace NAFTA, and some of the major changes include changes on cars and policies on labor, environmental standards, intellectual property rights, and some digital trade restrictions. There is the potential that after 16 years, this could be revamped and revised. It can be renewed, but it's set to expire in 16 years. So in 16 years, whoever the current administration is at that time, they'll be able to decide what they want to do. And again, that's in all three countries. They'll have to come together and work that out. So just a quick kind of compare and contrast what we have. Some of the things that are still the same, again, it's an agreement that's going to be between all three countries, the United States, Canada, and Mexico. There is some punishment still for intellectual property rights, but as you can see, some of the percentages have changed in the different categories. Obviously, the USMCA took effect in 2020, so that's changed. It's going to be reviewed every 6 years, and like I said, it could potentially expire in 2036. So again, free trade is just this idea of eliminating those trade barriers to bring up more trade and more circulation around the world. In our final lesson that we'll talk about in our next video is going to be globalization, and we're going to talk about some more of the pros and cons of why free trade might cause good things where others feel like it causes harm. So make sure you check us out for that one. As always, make sure this is in your interactive notebook, and thanks for watching.